Everyone's back from Arizona, and we are back on a somewhat normal schedule. We are here live Thursday at 10 a.m. Different faces than you're used to. I guess, well, one different face. Nate Bauer joining us today. We are breaking down and discussing, recapping Penn State's win 31-14 over Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. They advance on to the college football playoff semifinal in the Orange Bowl. We're going to talk about all the things surrounding that and some other things coming up this weekend. Lots of things in the show today. So welcome to everybody. Nate Bauer took a red eye after the game. Nate, how are you feeling today? How's the rebound effect going back to the East Coast? Did you even switch to Mountain Time at any point, on your body clock?
Sure. Yeah. Well, as evidenced by me waking up in a panic at 9:15 this morning, sleeping through apparently 2 hours of alarms. So yeah, you kind of rely on, and Fitz, I'm sure you've experienced this. I have an assumption that my kids will just wake me up. Like that's just how I don't need an alarm. I've got two humans to do that. And no, that's not what happened today. So hey, I made it. I'm here. I did it.
Yeah. Nobody would have been the wiser, and I find that impressive. Fitz, we didn't have to go anywhere specifically, but how you doing, and what's on your mind today?
Not much. My eyes are not red. I see that flight is spread to your face, by the way, Nate. Yeah, I've been holding that one in for a while. No, we've got no opponent right now for the Orange Bowl, which is the reason behind it. Obviously terrible, but we'll find out later today who Penn State's going to take on when they travel south. Penn State gets a couple extra days of rest. Again, inadvertently terrible things, but that's kind of what we're working with right now. But other than that,
let's just dive into that then. That was something we'll bring up in just a second. But of course, these things that have unfolded in the last little over 24 hours. You can watch the news to know all of the details, but terrorist attack in New Orleans has affected the Sugar Bowl. Is the Sugar Bowl? I apologize. I'm terrible with these things. Anyway, Penn State's next opponent, we don't know that yet because Notre Dame and Georgia are going to play today. And as of now, there's no word about a postponement of the Orange Bowl, but that is also up in the air. So, guys, I just effects on this game and the next game. What are your thoughts on Penn State's situation in all of this, which is what we can focus on because the loss of life and the tragedy of it is apparent and obvious?
Yeah, I mean, it's putting all that other stuff aside. I mean, you're kind of in a rock and a hard place here. You don't want to complain about not knowing who you're going to go against, but they're presently scouting both teams, which they were doing beforehand. So I don't think it changes all that much. But like I was talking to somebody formerly with the program, and they, by the time they landed, James would have wanted a scouting report on his desk for the next team that they were playing. So obviously it takes things back a day, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to change all that much. We're going to get James availability tomorrow. We're going to get some players over the weekend. Nate, I know, is going to the Palestra this weekend for Penn State basketball. So everything's kind of jammed in there, but I don't think it changes much on the Penn State side. Of course, from the opposite side, whether it's Georgia or Notre Dame, one less day, that means a lot right now. Like when you're talking, I mean, you look across the college football playoff and every team you can single out major stars with injuries, and Penn State not excluded from that, of course, with Abdul Carter not playing the second half and some of the first half as well. So yeah, I think that this time is, you don't want to sit here and say it's good for Penn State, because obviously everything is not great with that situation, but Penn State gets a couple extra days, and that's certainly helpful.
Yeah. And again, Nate, do you have anything you want to add, or can I make a hard right turn there?
Yeah, I'll just add real quick. If you Penn State's a habit organization, and so if you count back from next Thursday, which is game day for Penn State, really they traveled yesterday to get back. They have off today, and so, anyway, like the players have off, so they're not practicing. Yeah. Right. So the players have off. Tomorrow is the equivalent of a normal Sunday, which is a jog through / focusing on cleaning up the prior, right? So and then the next day, also Saturday, this week Saturday is the equivalent of Monday, right? Which is an off day for Penn State as well. So as these things go, I think it's more of an impact on the coaching staff by far than it is the players. And that's, as these things go, that's what you want, right?
Right.
Like the coaches control that. The players, you want to try to minimize the variabilities for players as much as you possibly can. And in this case, that's exactly how they'll handle it.
And speaking of how we'll handle this, we're not going to try and we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off. Horrible things happened yesterday. I don't know how to do this otherwise, but one of the things it does impact is Abdul Carter's health. And for those in the chat that are like, what is going on? We have several Star Wars experts here in the chat. Fitz, would you like to take this one, or would you like me to explain back to tanks?
You're like chomping at the bit here, so I'm going to let you go with that. That's not Abdul Carter in the chamber for those in the chat. But yeah, you were like ready to go at this one this morning, and yeah. I mean, this is all you, man.
Yeah, so this is a photo, a still of Darth Vader in a back-to-tank, which is a fictitious healing pod in which you are submerged in a liquid that can heal grievous wounds and mortal injuries. It is what sustains Darth Vader along with his environmental suit throughout the Star Wars universe after Obi-Wan Kenobi cuts off most of his limbs and he's burned in a lava pit at the end of the bad one. I don't remember number 3.
So Darth was not opting out of arms, is what
he
you're
was
saying?
not.
Okay.
No. So Abdul Carter, who was injured in the game, is signaling that he is in a back-to-tank from now until the next game, meaning he is healing up as much as possible with every single available resource known to this universe and not a galaxy far, far away a long, long time ago. So that's explaining that. And it's also fun. For people who for people who get it, this is fun. Wasn't this fun?
Can I just so yesterday, like, two things. One, everybody wants to know, right? I get fans interest in this, right? I think that the discourse that I saw yesterday was a little wild, right? There's and I'll make this personal because it's easier for me to do. My mom was asking me last night, like, what's happening with Abdul Carter? And I was like, Mom, did you watch the game? Yes. Did you see him get hurt? Yes. Okay. It's a day later from that. He's still hurt, right? Like, have you ever, we're all humans. Have you ever sprained your ankle, right? Like tripped over something, and then you're walking around the house and you've got a little limp. It still hurts the next day and will continue to hurt. But guess what? As time goes on, and depending on how much attention you give it, you will start to feel a little bit better and better and better. And so absent, particularly in this situation, broken bones, which clearly it was not. This is a situation where there is an opportunity with the passage of time to get better. But the expectation of, hey, will he be able to play 1 week from now is two things. One, something that Penn State is not going to volunteer because they will be happy to let their future opponent wait to find out.
Know whether or not their best player is going to play, and therefore, do you need to game plan for him and waste a ton of time for a guy that may or may not play? Right.
And two, they don't know, right? Like, that's the bottom line, is you don't know at this stage what condition it will be in. But I do think that there is a bottom line element to this of he's going to do everything in his power to possibly play, right? That there's no doubt about that. He will make those games. I do think that the intention will be for him to play. However, we are all not in that bubble. We do not need to share in optimism, right? Like, I've seen this play out before, right? We've watched this before, where of course he wants to play. Of course, they're going to do everything in their power to get ready to play. I have a healthy skepticism based on how the other night played out, right? Is this possible? Maybe.
Yeah. all the context clues I would say aren't negative, though. I mentioned this to Fitz, and again, this is you mentioned your personal view of this. My speculation on this, which is worth about as much as the data it will be to store it, which is very little. He never took his pads off. He did not have a sling post game. All of the indications are that it was not a grievous wound. To refer back to our thing here, he is doing what he can to heal to be ready to play. The context here is that he is personally planning on playing, and I made the cut. Unfortunately, there is a serious thing we could say here, which is hyperbaric chambers are the closest thing that we have to a healing pod in this known universe in terms of the ability to heal quickly and speed up the healing process through forced oxygenation of a enclosed area. Does Penn State have a hyperbaric chamber? I don't know. But these are the signals and clues in my brain that go, yeah, there's a possibility he's going to play next week. Do I know? No. As you pointed out, they probably have to do some x-rays and things that haven't happened maybe this afternoon, maybe this morning, maybe 6 minutes before the show started when he posted that tweet. Maybe that's when he found out there was no structural damage. I don't know. But those are the context clues that go through my mind when we have this conversation and he does stuff like that on Twitter. So there.
Yeah. Two uses of grievous so far from you. You're really into your Star Wars right now.
Yeah.
No, it comes down to the end. I mean, it's all in the doctors. It's all in the doctors. It's all in Abdul's healing, and it's not going to have an outcome until, what day is the game next week? The 9th? Probably pretty close to that, if not on that day. So I think that it's great. Yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at with everything right now, is just kind of looking at the potential for healing and how that works. And does that mean a limited role? Does that mean, just pass rushing? All these things are the things that you can speculate on leading up to the week, but you're not going to know until next week. And if we find out, it's going to be on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. It's not going to be on here.
Yeah, for sure. The Real Zeal says hyperbaric chambers are pseudoscience. Yeah, there's a lot of pseudoscience out there. I've heard cold plunge and cold therapy is also pseudoscience in terms of its effect on different aspects of human muscle growth and also human recovery. All these things are possible. All I know is that at one point, Tara Lowen spent a month in a hyperbaric chamber and then played in the Super Bowl and had a game that I never expected of him. So I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, let's talk about something else. Nate, we haven't had a chance to get your thoughts and opinions about what you heard and saw after the game. Let's just set the Abdul Carter thing aside for a moment. What did you hear and observe from the players in the locker room? And what did you hear and observe at the game? Your thoughts on Penn State's win over Boise State?
Yeah, this is a connected team right now. I think that's one thing that stands out is I asked Kobe King kind of what was unique about this group, and that's what he said. It's just that there's a team first mentality. There's a lot of unique, delicate balances, right? A college football team is an ecosystem, and it can change on a dime, but at this point in the season, all of their goals are very much in front of them, right? They have done the things that they need to do to be one of the 4 best teams in college football. They have an opportunity to win a national championship by continuing to win the games in front of them. And so whoever the next game is, I think that this is a team that believes it is capable of winning, right? Of continuing on this path. And even for fans and media that are kind of taking this in, why not? At this point, I do think that there are fair arguments to be made about the quality now, having seen both, right? The ability of SMU and Boise to compete. I thought that the physicality was a little bit jarring. It was, to me, clearly an edge that Penn State had. Obviously, Penn State played well, particularly in the first quarter. But, really for the rest of the game, even though it was a dogfight, Penn State still had, in many ways, advantages, I thought, in that game. So, the post game was good. I left immediately after it to go to the airport, which nobody cares about, but it was kind of a, they give you 15 minutes and you're in the locker room, and it's the only, just for fans who may or may not care about this, for normal home and away games, Penn State they bring out individual players. So guys who had notable performances, they bring them out. We're usually in a hallway, or in the case of Beaver Stadium, we're in the media room, and they have these little cubicles, and you talk with them. In these environments, in the bowl environments, because it's run by an outside organization, part of the process of participation is an agreement to open the locker room. And so what happens is, after 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is, and guys have an opportunity to get changed or do whatever they're going to do, they just open the doors, right? And it's 100 and some guys, right, just kind of standing around, and you can literally go talk to any one of them.
And they all want to talk to you too. That's all.
Yeah.
Especially after losses like last year.
I think Kobe was doing a live Instagram, like when I said, "Hey man, like, do you mind if I get a minute?" And literally like turned the camera on me and was like, "Hey, everybody say what's up." And I was like,
Nate, I have trained you for this moment for 3 or 4 years now. You are used to being on camera. Come on.
Yeah, no, it was not something I anticipated. And nonetheless, it was good, but it is much more informal, but it does give you an opportunity. The one nice thing is, gives you an opportunity to talk to guys without a dozen of your colleagues standing around necessarily. Yeah. And so I was able to have pretty good conversations with Jaywan Sider, who offered some really strong words. I wrote about it yesterday for Blue White Illustrated, but the dynamic of everybody, including James Franklin, talking about Ashton Jeanty as the best, quote unquote, running back in the country. Whereas Jaywan said, I have the 2 best running backs in the country, right? Like, that was like a thing. They took offense to they took offense to that. Tom Allen talking about, right, the lows of last year at this time. He was a guy who had just been unceremoniously fired from his job, right? And picked up this new gig, and now he is a significant piece of one of the best 4 teams in the country. So a lot of kind of cool introspective stuff out there.
I don't know. The buyout that he got seemed pretty ceremonious to me, so I would take that as unceremonious. But yes, you are correct. And then
okay, Fitz.
I mean, if you look at the details on how that played out, that was a nice little lump sum there for Mr. Allen. But yeah, it is, and that's what makes college football great, right? The stories from year to year. I mean, we were writing off Kaytron Allen a couple of months ago. He did not look like himself, and then Nick Singleton get hurt. He did not look like himself, and then all of a sudden, they look like the best versions of what we think they are, and that was really cool to watch play out. But yeah, I mean, getting them after that is the one thing that I do like, because you can get some good stuff, some like insightful stuff. It's not always the best quotes, but it's like the insightful body language type stuff after the game. And that's what's really helpful when you're trying to read situations. I know Nate is very good at that. And, that's one of his best qualities, of course, but no, it's always fun. But yeah, to see Penn State make the journey that they've made, 13 wins, never been done before in program history. Of course, it's a different format than any other team has played in program history, but at the same time, still pretty damn impressive. Like I think we kind of lost sight of that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you've been on the internet in the typical places where people are negative, that it means nothing. They've beaten Boise State and SMU, and they're one of 4 teams that will be playing at the end here out of 134. Certainly not a deal whatsoever. Fitz, go with me on this one. Is Penn State currently recruiting players and/or players in the transfer portal?
So yes, okay. Right now, if you look at what the schedule looks like, and this is, I don't know who made this schedule, but portal visitors were able to fire back up again on the 1st. So yesterday, that is unbelievable to me, but hey, this is the situation that we're in, because these guys need to get on campus. Penn State will have some guys that are, I mean, they're still finalizing visits, all very fluid at this point, for the next couple of days into the weekend. The focus is fully on insert next opponent here, but in the Orange Bowl. But you look at what Penn State's still trying to do. They're still looking at receivers. They have two of them, and in fact, I'm writing a story right now. Anai White and Devontae Ross have signed with Penn State, so they're officially in for January. Excuse me. They're still looking at linebackers. They're still looking at even running backs, because you got to figure out that situation with Nick and Kaytron and how that's going to come back around. You're still looking at offensive linemen, just because they're offensive linemen, and of course defensive tackle as well. So there's still a lot of potential leads out there. I'm looking at the transfer portal. There's some good players out there. There's not as many as people want to believe there is, and there's not as many upgrades as people want to believe there is. But that's kind of where they're at right now. So you've got to shift gears. Penn State, as Nate said, got back yesterday afternoon. So it's not exactly like they had a big turnaround time, but you're looking Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then they take off again. I believe they take off on Monday. If that's, I think that
sounds about right. Right about it.
I had in front of me at one point, but like I said, it's all very fluid right now. So yes, more portal stuff happening. Not much in recruiting. The window is open for portal visitors, not open for recruits right now. But Penn State did have a key recruit at the Fiesta Bowl in Troy Hune, who has now seen. He flew across the country for the first round playoff game against SMU, and then he made the much shorter trip from Southern California to Phoenix for the Fiesta Bowl. So Troy Hune seems to be pretty well all in, and the weather was a little bit better this time for those guys.
Yeah, and appreciate you, Fitz. That was much longer. That was about 100% longer than I was expecting for our recruiting update today, just because it's, there's so many things to go on the show. Appreciate you sharing all that information. If you want more, again, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Sign up now for just $1, and you get access for 7 days to try us out. But if you're looking for a New Year's resolution, go all in on your Penn State fandom. I mean, as we talked about, they're still playing in January. Subscribe for a year, get inside access every single day to all this information, more of what Fitz isn't saying, maybe some of the names that he's talking about and talking around. You can go get those at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Just $1. And if you're here in the chat, there's plenty of people that do both, that are avid viewers that started here as YouTube subscribers and then made their way over to the site. So plenty of people can attest to what we do and how we do it. But that recruiting update is brought to you by My Perfect Franchise. We need to get some recruiting talk on the Andy show, because he is a recruiting fanatic. He loves this. He's a Texas fan, by the way. So he is still alive in the college football playoff as well. I think he'd love it if Penn State and Texas played in the national championship. And you can talk to him all about that if you call him at 404-973-9901. Also, you can talk about your future. I don't want to dive in too much of the cliches of resolutions, but it is a time to reflect and decide, what do you want out of your life? You have a fresh year, a fresh start. Do you want to continue to work in a job that doesn't give you fulfillment, that takes you away from your family, that you make money for somebody else? What if you want to make money for yourself and determine your own future, be your own boss? Well, franchise management might be for you. If you have corporate experience, middle management experience in a corporation, you know how to run a business, you understand P&Ls and all the things that are coming out of my mouth that I don't understand. Amortization tables, I don't know. What are we talking about here? Andy knows, I don't. Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. He can coach you through the application and ownership process of franchises, where you buy into a corporate structure and you run that franchise. You can do brick and mortar. You can do semi-absentee. You can be full hands-on. There's a million different ways. And we've had Blue White Illustrated Lions Den message board members join him for this, including for a former baseball player at Penn State who owns went through Andy's training, went through Andy's process, which is 100% free, and then, of course, found himself a franchise to manage and is thriving. So Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, appreciate him for being a sponsor here for 2025. Once again, coming back for this coming year. Also, do you want to go to the game? These guys are going to the game. They're going to be at the game. Are you going to be at the Orange Bowl? You can go. Collegiate Athletic Travel has a deal for you. I'm going to put this up right now so I don't forget. There's a special deal that you can't get anywhere else. So you can get the full package. You can have the entire concierged experience, which these guys have gone through before because we've traveled with Collegiate Athletic Travel before. Or you can get a special rate that you can't get anywhere else that's cheaper than the commercial rates. Call 814-238-4987. If you're a do-it-yourselfer and you want to go to the game and you've got your hotels lined up and you're going to stay in a hostel, or you have friends downtown Miami or whatever, and you just need a flight, nonstop flights on their chartered airplanes from Harrisburg and State College, $795 from Harrisburg, $895 from State College. Call 814-238-4987. If you're listening to the podcast, the number is in the description of the podcast or in the description of the video. And of course, guys, you've been on these trips before, and you're going to be on this one. You're going to, as far as I'm aware, you guys are going to be doing a chalk talk the day of the game. So if you want to get a preview of the game from Nate Bauer and Sean Fitz, join Collegiate Athletic Travel for the full thing and go and have the experience of a lifetime. A 3-day beach vacation with other Penn State fans, a direct flight to the game, hotel accommodations, everything. And I'll just put this up, guys. What is it like going on these trips?
It's awesome. A couple of things. One, you cannot get a flight out of State College to Miami for the 7th to the 10th. Like I'm looking at Google Flights right now. So literally it's your only option if you want to fly out of here. And it honestly, it's a great option because even before the flights were sold out of State College, they were running $1,600, I think, ish. So like on the front end, that's a great price just for the flight only package. But to do the whole thing, the land and air is also fantastic. I mean, I've been working with these guys for 20 years now, right? Going back to, as far back as, when I started my career. So, to have a direct flight out of where you live, which in my case is State College, there's a shuttle bus to the hotel that they just hold your hand, walk you through the process. Like the whole thing is taken care of for you to the highest level of professionalism. It's excellent. My parents did it a couple of years ago, going to the Rose Bowl. They wanted to go to that game. And, I think for anybody who is in the realm of, I want to go to the Penn State football game, right? Like the semifinal football game that Penn State is in. I don't have the time, interest, bandwidth to look up where to stay, where to eat, like all of the stuff that goes into traveling on short notice, especially.
That's a great point. I took a vacation. I was thinking about this. I took a vacation to Oregon this summer, and it took us like 2 months to plan, and we had to plan every single detail. Where are we getting the rental car? Where are we staying? All the things we're doing, everything. And we spent about the same as we would if we had gone on this trip and had everything taken care of for us.
So it's great. It's great. My parents had an awesome time. They loved it. Obviously my experience of the trip is different from a normal fan in that I have media obligation, right? We're doing interviews and that kind of stuff. And so we kind of branch off a little bit, but for the bare necessities of getting to the location of the game and having a place to stay, it's always top notch. So can't say enough.
And you can call 814-238-4987 to get your rate of the air-only package, and you can go sit next to Nate on the plane. You can go say hi. You can have a good time. They'll be on the chartered flight out of State College. I'm 99% sure. And if not, for this, they will be. Let's move on. Let's talk about the game. Finally, let's get to the game because the chat is talking about the game, and there are some unhappy people in the chat, Fitz, with Penn State's performance in the
17-point win in the national quarterfinal.
17-point win against Boise State. So let's talk about. Do you want to start offense, defense? How do you want to structure this? I've done the film study at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I'll have more to say about the defensive side. I'm watching the film today. So if you want to watch the film along with me this afternoon, I do a film breakdown on the message board. Basically every single play, I go through what I see on the All-22, and I give you the breakdown of what happened and why and all that stuff. But where do you guys want to start today?
I'm going to start with the officiating because that seems to be the hot topic in the chat. I reached out to our officiating expert, Greg Pickle. He's like our guy in the booth that we go to during reviews. And he says the officiating crew is yet to be assigned. They actually have to grade the game tonight, the officials in the game tonight, and then they'll sign the Orange Bowl. So that's going to be something that we'll look for in the next couple of days. But it's always a hot topic, and Greg's always on top of it. So I wanted to put that one out. Rose Bowl refs, I'm not sure who.
I was just throwing that up there. Okay. That was just the one of the questions in the chat. I was just throwing up an example for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's unlikely to be, SEC, Big Ten. I guess with Notre Dame being independent, that kind of throws a wrench into things. But going back to the original game aspect of what we were talking about, Penn State's defensive game plan. We texted about this yesterday, and obviously the coverages were the big thing. But I'm watching that game, and I'm thinking Penn State absolutely pulled off the game plan that they were going for, and that is just throwing waves at Ashton Genty, and that worked. Yes, Boise had a 300-yard passing game, but is that what you were looking to kill you? Is that what you were looking to get you? And Genty, I believe, according to PFF, forced 16 missed tackles, his third highest total of the season, which is pretty amazing. He's an amazing player. Like, anybody saying he's overrated after that, I don't get it. Like, this guy is a fantastic player. The difference is, and this is something that they ran on all year, was his yards after contact were incredible. Like, he led the nation in rushing and yards after contact. Like, his yards after contact were ahead of the next guy in actual rushing yards. It's when still
incredible in this game. 81 yards is still incredible after contact.
Right. When he got hit in the Mountain West, he could keep going. He didn't have 3 Penn State defenders on him, and that's what Penn State did so well. They sent waves. They outflanked them. They did some amazing stuff in the run game. And that's encouraging to me, because you look at the two teams that they're set to play, and the quarterback play really doesn't scare you there either. Like, obviously these guys are in the national quarterfinals for a reason, Georgia and Notre Dame, but are they like passing attacks that you're terrified of? I don't think so. So I think that bodes well for what Penn State is trying to do in the next round, whether it be stopping Jeremiah Love or, you've got Georgia with a backup quarterback. I don't know how he's going to play. Like, I was just texting with a friend that, thinks they match up with Notre Dame better. Well, if Georgia slips by and the quarterback doesn't look great, I mean, that's reason for optimism there as well. So obviously, the lighter side of the draw, when you look at what Ohio State did to Oregon yesterday and you look at what Ohio State did to Tennessee, they're a freaking juggernaut right now, and you don't want to play them. Absolutely. You want as many teams to potentially upset them as you can before you get to the final if you're coming out of this side of the bracket. I think I actually came away encouraged with that defensive, the defensive front. Carter being out of there obviously changes some of the math, but those defensive tackles, all 3 of them, because Penn State had 5. Absolutely wonderful. And hey, you're not playing group of 5 offensive linemen in the next round. Obviously, it's going to be a step up. But Zane Durant, Keziah Izzard, Devon J. Thomas, just unheralded work and did a really, really nice job in setting the table for everybody else to clean up and rack up the stats. If
you're looking at PFF and you're looking at missed tackles, and you'll see like 30% missed tackle rate for some of these guys. But here's the stat I want to support what Fitz is saying. And this is what I was, when you look at the film, and I wanted to find the average depth of contact where Ashton Genty was hit every single run, essentially, on average. And I had to backdoor this. So the average depth of tackle, meaning where he went down on the field, was just over 3 yards downfield. His yards after contact were 2.7. So essentially, he got 0.3 yards downfield before he was hit on every play. He got to the line of scrimmage on every single play and was hit by somebody. And then the rally was, and the assists and the tackles there were on the second wave, which, Fitz talked about, James Franklin talked about, everybody's talked about here. Nate, I wanted to get your thoughts. What was the big takeaway for you in this game from what we saw from Penn State?
I just want to add one thing to that conversation. Genty ended up with 3 quote unquote explosive runs, and actually by Penn State standards, it would only be 1. Right? Yep. They only gave up 1 explosive run to him on the 3rd down call, the 3rd and 21.
The maddening 3rd down draw.
And
it's like Manny was back.
Yeah, the funniest thing was Tom Allen literally said, he was just like, "Man, I wish I had that call back." He's like, of course they were going to run. Of course.
Like, he played cover 2. They didn't have 2 safeties deep the whole game until that point.
Yep. So it was just, everybody's basking in this win. And he's like, man, like can you believe they did that?
Coaches are crazy. You know this. And they did run right at Max Granville. That's an unfortunate baptism by fire there for the true freshman.
Yeah. So in any case, but yes, him bouncing off of tackle, all of it as advertised for him 100%, but per Penn State's game plan, the game plan was to not let him backbreak you, right? Like, and that's what he does, is he rips off the 50-yard run. The thing that Nick Singleton did is the thing that Ashton Genty does. And they were able to prevent him from doing that. What else do you want to talk about? Offense.
So, can I just throw this in here? We're on the defense. I want to talk about the specifics of Genty is the focus of the entire game plan, and that's right, and that's fair, and that's where it starts and ends. Defensive communication was still a massive issue in this game. In situations where he's not in play, 3rd and long, the touchdown to the tight end. These are mental errors, mental MAs, missed assignments by the defense that are continuing to happen of, I don't know what the coverage is, or I don't know who's my guy. And so there were a couple of instances where Penn State is still at the snap trying to get lined up. Tony Rojas down in the red zone gives up an incompletion. And if you go back and you watch the film, he's got to cover 2 guys because they're in a 2 high safety look, 5 wide, and there's 2 slot defenders. So he lines up over one of them, and then Jalen Reed's trying to get him to line up over the other. So even if he isn't late to his spot and the quarterback then sees the other guys uncovered, these are the things that I think are concerning and that people in the chat have are complaining about. And I think those are still concerning criticisms that are valid in this game plan. Whether or not they were willing to give up shots or underneath routes in cover 3 against zone, that is a concession I can understand.
Right.
But some of these defensive communication errors are still a persistent problem, despite the fact they got strong leaders in Kobe King and Jalen Reed. You would think that wouldn't happen in a defense like this.
Nate, I got a question because I wasn't there. How loud was it? Because there were procedure penalties all over the place. There were communication issues and everything like that. It just seemed different than, you know.
So a couple of things. One, the media section is encased in glass, and so we don't get the natural noise. But it appeared to be loud. However, and I will add this because I was talking about it in the chat during the game. I am 100% convinced that Boise was messing with the snap count the same way that SMU was for Penn State. Drew was complaining about it constantly. It's the only thing that made sense is Penn State went to a clap, right? But I'm 100% convinced that Boise was messing with both the cadence as well as the clap. And, I think that there is probably some video evidence to support that.
Right? I saw that a little bit last night in terms of their hand signals sound a lot like claps. They looked a lot like claps too.
Yep. So, so that was part of the procedure issue that I think was happening there.
Oh, I mean, it happened on both sides though. Like you talk about Boise jumped off sides.
I'm not convinced that Penn State didn't
do the same thing. Yeah, no, they all do
the same thing.
But,
I'm pretty sure because it was another SEC crew and their interpretation of that rule, as I understand it, is that you can call one or the other, but you can't call both.
Gotcha. So let's talk about the offense then. Starts out hot, which I think, was one of my, it was one of my keys to the game of get out to an early lead and make Boise State chase you, something they haven't had to do all year. And then, the Penn State offense did what it sometimes does, which is kind of get mired in the muck. What was your assessment now that we've had a couple of hours since the game about the overall performance and then the inconsistency in that second quarter specifically that seemed to slow down what felt like a runaway freight train, Fitz?
Yeah, I mean, you look at, I think the run game kind of buoys everything. I saw something on Twitter yesterday. Somebody made a comment in response to a Parker Fleming chart, which those things are fantastic. If you're not following him at Stats.org, go for it. But it said passing was something along the lines of passing finds the end zone, but running wins the game. And that's kind of what we saw with Penn State. It's kind of been the way that they've done it the whole year. I mean, those running backs probably should have more touchdowns than they do. But you get down there and Drew, I think he had 130 some yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's kind of how those things came about. And you absolutely need that. And that's going to be the difference in these semifinal games. But that's kind of what you're looking at is the criticisms that you have still in the passing game remain the same. Blitz pickup, separation on the outside and things of that nature. But to get the running game going with that, to have the offensive line, we've singled out Rucci a few times with the way that he's played at right tackle, I think is really encouraging. And now, again, you're going to have to take a step up because because, no disrespect to SMU and Boise. They're very, very much different defensive fronts and different defensive looks than they'll get from Georgia or Notre Dame. Not saying Boise's a slouch. Boise was pretty good up front, actually. But it's going to be a different style of player, a different kind of power four player. So that is the thing that you look at, is how does this carry over? And, Penn State's running game has been on and off, very, very much on and off. But with these two guys healthy, with these two guys playing the way that they are, you're certainly encouraged by that. Now, I will say the play calling, I thought they took a step back, and I thought they took a safe step back. Like, this is something that we've seen in the past before, is you get a lead and then all of a sudden you sort of rest on your laurels. Now, this is kind of flies in the face of how things actually went, because you put the ball on the turf and you gave it right back to them when you're up 14-0. That should have been a 21-0 ball game, and it had nothing to do with changing the style of play calls and anything like that. You just flubbed it and put the ball on the turf. But going further, like, that's a closer game than it needed to be, because I think you coach yourself into some of those situations. T. Frank, we talked on the post-game show the other night about how this thing came together on 3rd and short, and how they sort of flipped it in the second half and flipped those stats along with it. And that's encouraging to that, but don't put yourself in that situation to begin with is basically what I'm thinking. And there's different ways to improve it. There's different ways to not have your 3rd and short offense be focused on the tight end. I know that was one of your things that was coming out of Saturday night. Or
explosive plays. Like, they wanted two things. They wanted explosive plays to Tyler Warren. Like I said on the postgame show, if you haven't seen it, the shiny object plays of look over here, and then Tyler Warren's over there, but he's the best player on the offense, and they had a double team on him on every single shiny object play.
Yeah, absolutely. And but you can also, go back. It's kind of avoiding the hot hand type theory, which is something they pride themselves in. Like, again, flies in the face of what they say versus what they do. Now, I think you do see more of that. And I think when you bring in a team that has a defense like Notre Dame, or you bring in a team that has a defense, the defense hasn't played up to the standard, but the defense of Georgia is always going to be one of the better defenses in the country. You maybe get a little bit more conservative, and maybe that's what they needed on Saturday against Boise.
Yeah. I think maybe you'd flip it. Like, against Georgia, you don't get a quarterback sneak because their defensive line, I'm just going off of helmet scouting, I haven't seen specifically, but the defensive recruiting would tell you that they've got a pretty good defensive line, and you might not get the push you want with Tyler Warren on a QB sneak. So you got to go to shiny object plays. Against Boise State, you should be able to get 3rd and 3 on the ground. And Nate, I did you talk to Andy Nittany post game, or was that Greg? I saw that we had some conversation with him.
I think that it was Greg. It wasn't me.
Okay.
A couple of things to this conversation. One, I think it's hard in the moment and after, like, the things that Andy Nittany sees that lead to the play call that he calls are beyond my scope.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know what he's seeing and why he calls what he does when he does, but there's a reason for it. Right. It's not, there is something there that is advantageous to and appropriate for what he's
Can I give you my theory anyway? 9 broken tackles from Kaytron Allen on the ground. And then let me just quickly look over here. How many broken tackles in the air? Only 1. Penn State wanted to get individuals one-on-one. All of those plays were individuals one-on-one trying to get a broken tackle or a player in space to get a broken tackle. Getting those through the explosive play in the passing game was where they did not get those plays. They didn't get the deep shots, and they didn't get one-on-ones for Tyler Warren to then steamroll somebody and get the big play. That's at least my interpretation of it.
But they had the deep pass to Omari, right? Like, there were some explosives. I do think there's also a glossing over of how critical plays didn't go Penn State's way. So it particularly in the first half, right? Kaytron Allen ran for 50 yards. That was called back on a hold by Sal Wormley, right? Yep. There were multiple penalties and or missed opportunities that took place. Omari Evans was ticked at himself for the catch that I believe would have been a touchdown. Was that not in the end zone?
Yep.
The right ball was in his hands. It happens, but also one that he wishes he had back. Again, this is all on memory at this point, but Drew had some stupid good throws that did not finish in catches all the time. You know,
That was
so
the game. So that was the game plan, was kind of an explosive play fits. Go deep on a lot of these because of, you know, some of the structural things that they were trying to do from play action and also from the coverage scheme and wanting to take those big shots in the passing game. 4 big time throws from Drew Allen according to PFF, but the percentage, 14.8%. Nearly 15% of his throws were dots. So when he threw the ball, like those 3 in a row before halftime, where he basically throws 3 touchdowns and they're all dropped. Yeah, Nate has a great point of like they could have had a lot more points, a lot more opportunities to score before halftime.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you get with Drew when you drop back, or when he drops back and you see him deliver his like the throw to Tyler Warren for the first touchdown. Like, I mean, that it looked like he was throwing into a net like that. It looked like he was out of practice, just tossing it. And when you see that, you know, it's not to bring everything back to golf, but Nate, when I swing hard, does it work for me?
No. I don't know what the right answer is here, because when you swing easy, that doesn't work either.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
that's pretty good.
Keeping score, it's 1-1. It's 1-1. The red face comment, the golf comment, like we're even here now.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Okay, so when you don't have to throw it, you know, you don't have to swing hard to get a good shot, is what I'm saying. And when Drew is nice and easy, Cliff, I don't want to hear from you either. When Drew is nice and easy, that's when he looks his best, because he's so damn naturally talented. Yeah,
absolutely, and that's where the throw to Tyler Warren after halftime is I can't even contribute because I don't know anything about golf. The only thing I do is swing hard and hit the ball towards like the other green, not even on the fairway.
You should have stanzas that one and just got out of here after that, Nate. That was as high as you're gonna get.
The throw after halftime down the seam where he had Tyler Warren wide open. He's coming back from the front side read. You know, that's an area where he was rushing that throw to put a point on what Fitz is saying is like, you can see when it's right and when it's wrong. And when it's right, that's an NFL dime to Tyler Warren before halftime. And then something you'd see, you know, in college missing high over, although I just want to give him credit that it was within Tyler Warren's catch radius. So it was a catchable ball. I'm not saying that he threw a good pass. I would put that on both players to say, Drew, throw it better, because then it's catch and run. Tyler's got to catch that because it hit him in the hands.
And that's the issue that we have with Tyler Warren. He's made so many of those catches that his routine becomes, you know, it becomes bigger, and it becomes more, his catch radius becomes something that you think he's going to, if he can touch it, he's going to catch it. And that's, you know, not something you see on the outside from Penn State's receivers, but you've grown to expect Warren to catch that ball, especially the one down by the goal line. Like that's one that he usually brings in. So, and that was a heck of a throw as well.
David Bortner asked this question. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick. The fact that they made the spectacular plays at the beginning of the game is exactly the way it had to go, and what you would have chosen, right? If you could trade the middle drops, whatever you want to call them, but if you could trade those for the beginning of the game, you would not. The game flow, right? We talked about it all week, how getting out, this was your point, right? Getting out to a lead was so advantageous for Penn State in this circumstance. And they were out of their minds hot in the first quarter. And again, I mean, that was Nick Singleton would have had 2 house calls, right? If it weren't for Drew dropping, right?
Trying to pull on that. That's the unfortunate thing about those plays is he's reading the D end. He doesn't see that Nick Singleton has a touchdown lined up. So he's just that he was right to pull the ball because the guy crashed. And then he was really wrong to drop it on the ground afterwards.
Can't wait for Nate's next column. Did Penn State start too fast?
That's not me. I don't do that.
The question here in the chat from David Bortner: why did Penn State look so unprepared for the Boise State blitz? I haven't dug into all of these things, but watching it live, it was identifying the same the problem and then attacking it over and over and over and over again. Boise State sent a similar blitz through the A gap against Dawkins and specifically Nick Singleton that got home repeatedly. And so, I've talked to, and you could probably go on YouTube or on Twitter and see Landon Tengwall's breakdown of the offense, and he was very upset about that, of the same thing happening over and over again. I guess, what do you guys assess the execution about that, or is that a cause for concern going forward? How do you address that kind of situation unfolding and giving a kill switch again to the Penn State passing attack in the middle of the game, which we've seen happen in years past?
I would, and I'm not going to do it, but I would have to go back at Boise and see how much they attacked up the middle this year, because that was, like, to me, that was the key. They were bringing guys right over each side of Nick Dawkins, which you're going to slide a little bit. If you're a center, you're not just going to sit there and play straight up, and you're going to fill it with the back. And the back seemed to be in the wrong spot a couple of times. So I think that was the biggest thing that I looked at. Now, the counter to that is, what was Penn State going to do in terms of a safety valve? There really was nothing there. And it was available to them, but they didn't use it. And I think that might have had something to do with the personnel that they were playing. They were playing as if it was 11 personnel. I said this after the game. They were playing sort of a spread look, as if it was 11 personnel, even if you would have had 2 or maybe even 3 tight ends in the game. So Singleton needs to be there, the second tight end. They got Reynolds a couple of times, but it starts at the quarterback, identifying that blitz, and putting the running back in the right spot will go a long way. I think Kaytron was pretty good in pass protection. I think Nick had some hits and misses. But yeah, that's my big thing, is like the safety valve needs to be a part of that, especially if you're going to overcompensate like Boise State did and send 2 and 3 guys at the A gap.
Nate, you have any thoughts on this? I got another question lined up that none of us have an answer to, but I think we can generally talk about here.
No. Yeah, no. Let's hit the next one.
Josh wants to know, who does Penn State match up better with, Georgia or Notre Dame? Josh, personally, like I said, I have not finished reviewing the film from Boise State, so I have not moved on to Georgia and Notre Dame breakdowns, and I probably won't until we know which one it is, because I am not a staff of 20 that can break down both of them this season and hand you a scouting report. So I'm sorry. I wish I did know. I really wish. I always say the criticisms that hit home the most are the ones you agree with, and I would love to be able to talk about these things. But we do know, as I think Fitz, was it you that was saying, neither team has a great passing attack, and they have good running games.
Yeah, they're, Big Ten-ish teams. Like they're teams that, with a scheme that maybe Penn State has seen something like that before. And I just think the quarterbacks are key here. Like Gunnar Stockton, I don't know what he's going to be like. Like that is a deep pull to get thrown into, especially when you take a look at the teams that have had the bye. It has not worked out for them. So I think every team has been down 2 scores that has had the bye coming out to start the game. So I don't know how that's going to play out. I think probably schematically matching up better with Notre Dame, but I think from a personnel standpoint and the way that they've done things, and I've seen some Georgia games this year where they look fantastic, against Texas, but also I saw them against Kentucky not do anything. So I think that these are both teams that are certainly beatable. I think all 3 teams in this side of the bracket beatable by each and every one that's of the others. So I don't know what the best call is. Yeah, it's a cop out, Nate, but I'm not really thinking that anybody is head and shoulders a better matchup than the other.
Nate, do you have any general thoughts on the situation Penn State finds itself in, having already played its game? I know we talked about this at the beginning, but just now that we have the kind of conversation about the last game in the book, do you think Penn State's in a good spot here for a chance to play in the national championship game?
Sure. Yeah. Teams to me that give Penn State problems are the ones that can beat you with both the pass and the run, and do it at random, right? Or in a flood one way or the right. If you can effectively do both, if you have answers for what Penn State is doing defensively and can put Penn State on its heels, which is a thing that we saw at Southern Cal in the first half in particular, certainly against Oregon. Those are the teams that, to me, looking at Penn State's defense, are the ones that present the biggest problems. If Georgia and Notre Dame can't do that or don't do it effectively, and quarterback play being a huge part of that, yeah, I think that sets up fairly well for Penn State. You know, because it keeps the equation the same to what the past two games have been. Right? It keeps the equation the same of, hey, if you do this one thing and don't get burnt by 80-yard touchdowns on the ground, you're going to be in pretty good shape, right? If you can execute those assignments, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
I would say that my biggest concern is that both teams have a pretty good defensive line to great defensive lines. And Notre Dame has elite cornerback play from what I saw against Indiana and the way they talked about them. I don't know if that's true, but those are the observations. So Notre Dame's defense seems like it could be a nullifying factor for the offense if they can't get the ground game going whatsoever. With Georgia, this is totally ignorant of me. I would be concerned about the size of the interior, and Penn State has struggled against teams with really good defensive tackles. And then Fitz, this is the attrition factor we've kind of talked about. Penn State was down to 2 upperclassmen defensive ends at the end of the game and 3 defensive tackles. Zane Durant looked like he was getting tired in the third and fourth quarter. The attrition factor of the defensive line throughout the injuries and off-field issues and players leaving the team, it just feels like if there's one thing that's been a strength all year, that if it disappears this late in the season with all of that, it might be that defensive line late in a game against a team that is committed to attacking them on the ground.
Yeah, and it depends on game flow. Like, Ashton Jeanty got 30 carries this week, but you probably would have gotten 40 if that's a closer game. Like, that is what I'm looking at with that defensive line. Now you look ahead to the forecast, and it's not Miami. It's not 80 degrees and humid. Like, it's going to be a cooler day, so it's going to be fine from that standpoint. Now it's a little bit different than 20 degrees and windy for the SMU game, but at the same time, you should be okay, and you shouldn't be in a situation where it's like you're worrying about cramps all week long and things like that. So I think that helps a little bit. I'm not crazy about it. Like, I'll trust me, I'll be very happy to be in 60-degree weather, especially after walking the dogs this morning here. But it's something that probably could wear on them more. You take a look at the injury to Carter, and his status, of course, going to remain unknown up till game time probably, but also Smith Vilbert, like, he got dinged at the end of the game as well. So you need those guys back. No disrespect to Jalen Harvey or Max Granville. You don't want to run freshmen out there. So, like, that's kind of where I'm at with that. So every team is dealing with injuries. Every team is dealing with that. But of all the places you don't want injuries, it's up front is number one.
Yeah.
I guess quarterback's number one, and then, quarterback's number one in everything. So, but then, on top of that, up front is pretty important as well.
I just think that if Penn State is in a, like, maybe I'm wrong about this. This could be very stupid. 17-21 score games are where it's a toss up, right? Like, to me, those are the games that Penn State can win but it's just competitive, right? Like, Georgia and or Notre Dame's defense stopping Penn State is, to me, less of a factor dictating success than Penn State's defense not being able to stop a team, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that to me, that's the ingredient, that's the variable that Penn State doesn't necessarily have an answer for, because Penn State's offense, to me, is not built to put up 50 points. It's not how they've played most of this season. So if it gets into, if that's what those teams represent, is offenses that Penn State's defense can handle, and then maybe defenses, that give Penn State problems for sure. But it's a matter of that handful, those 4 plays that go one way or the other. I don't see an issue with that for Penn State.
And the big thing on the heels of that is, T. Frank touched on it, but SMU and Boise did not have great corner play. Both of these teams will have great corner play, and that's going to be something when you take a look at the hand-wringing about Penn State's wide receivers, which is warranted in terms of separation, in terms of making the contested catch. And Trey had a great one over the middle to extend a drive in the fourth quarter the other day, but they're going to take a step up in terms of, we talk about how different Power 4 offensive and defensive linemen are. Those corners are going to be a step up as well.
Yeah. And we'll see how all of that plays out on the field today, and then we'll have an idea of a 100% better idea of what's going on with Penn State after that. So just a quick update. Of course, the Beaver Stadium demolition happens this weekend. I'll be there to watch it and give you guys some, hopefully some video that doesn't suck of the demolition. Of course, you're going to see it all over social media. It's not going to be anything special that I have. I'm just going to be there. So if you want to watch our copy, we'll have that as well for you at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com this weekend. James Franklin is going to speak to the media tomorrow. So James Franklin press conferences. Everyone wants to know what the leader of the Nittany Lions has to say about all these situations. It is the number one thing that people come to our YouTube channel for. We will have that tomorrow as well. So we know that part of the schedule. Greg and I might do a quick update on Sunday coming up this weekend, just because there's so much stuff going on. And then, of course, next week, we're going to work out our schedule. These guys are traveling, so probably a Monday show and then maybe a Wednesday show. Just trying to outline everything for everyone here in the chat, because you guys are here on every show. And I just want you to know we don't necessarily know the 100% schedule yet, because these guys have media responsibilities they have to get to that's their job. And then when they're done with those things, that's when we have this conversation. So that's on this side. That's what's coming up. Nate, what are you writing about? Basketball. Tell me about the Palestra this weekend.
They got a game tonight. So Penn State plays Northwestern tonight at the BJC. So I will be there, full coverage as always. And then, Penn State, Indiana on Sunday at the Palestra at noon. It's always great. It's the one special environment that Penn State has for basketball every season, or, it seems like they're going to have it every season. So that's, it's a highlight. It's fun personally, professionally to be in that environment. And we'll see how they stack up against Indiana's $8 million roster.
I keep forgetting that basketball is where this stuff really has been happening for a long time. So it's that's a shocking number that caught me off guard. Fitz, what's coming up from you this week at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com?
Like I said, I got a story coming up here in a minute. Penn State has signed 2 guys from the transfer portal, so that's good. Those are guys will be part of the team in the spring semester as well. Still looking around to matchups. Until this Sugar Bowl happens, it's really tough to talk about next week because you'd like to know who you're playing. But continue to follow the site. Transfer portal updates. Like I said, they're working on some visitors to get on the next couple of days, because it's a small window, but it's an important window for Penn State to try and lock these down.
All right. We will be back with all the things I just described coming up over the next couple of days. Thank you so much for everyone here. And if you're new, because we're deep into territory where we're the only show in town, almost literally, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Rocket ship, we're to the moon, all those cliches. Be a part of it here on the YouTube channel as well. I'm Thomas Rankar for Nate Bauer, Sean Fitz. We'll talk to you later.